Farmer Harlan Hoyt was 489th generation Hoyt and dairy farmer, and had sensibly lived on Planet Cowtown his entire life. He was short in stature and purposeful with his words and actions. Farmer Hoyt always wore durable yet comfortably long clothing, and had a pair of leather boots that had become hardened from use. On his head, he always wore a half-mesh trucker cap, and no matter what, there was absolutely always a toothpick in his mouth. Following Farmer Hoyt was Shadow Lucas, who noticed that despite the toothpick in his mouth, Farmer Hoyt lit a cigarette. You know, they say smoking is a leading killer, said Shadow Lucas. Them's is health sticks, said Farmer Hoyt as he exhaled. Shadow Lucas said nothing for once, but his eyes grew to the size of saucers as he followed the aged Farmer Hoyt. Deciding to press his luck, Shadow Lucas asked, Harlan, how did you get to be so old? Lighting a new cigarette with the ember of the butt of the first one, Harlan Hoyt said, The two best rules of life. Number one is, never tell anyone everything. Farmer Hoyt stopped and looked up at Shadow Lucas, locked eyes, drew hard off his cigarette, and exhaled. Then he turned around and continued walking. Shadow Lucas followed in silence. Presently, they passed a large black semi-truck with the words Old Bessie painted on the doors. Shadow Lucas was very interested to learn more about the semi-truck. Well, here we are. Have a sample before you buy the whole cow, said Farmer Hoyt. Shadow Lucas, who still had the wrong idea about Planet Cowtown, said shakily, right here, now? Farmer Hoyt handed Shadow Lucas a tin cup of boiling Fabardo heifer milk, saying, Of course. And then, wait a minute, said Farmer Hoyt, taking back the tin cup. You ain't one of them damn hippies that come out here wanting to do unnatural things to my heifers, is you? Right about now is when Shadow Lucas realized his error when reading the newspaper this morning, and backpedaled his words as fast as he could. No, he said, trying to sound believable. I'm an antique fixture collector for a very high-profile celebrity. The historical significance of Planet Cowtown is known across the cosmos, and my client would love to have even one piece from this auspicious location. Farmer Hoyt lit a new cigarette, saying, Well, everything is for sale. Attempting to throw Farmer Hoyt off the trail that he was very interested in Old Bessie, the semi-truck, Shadow Lucas asked about it first, and then circling back after asking about useless items. What about that old black truck? Asked Shadow Lucas. Exhaling, Farmer Hoyt lit another new cigarette as he spoke. Replica of a long-nosed Peterbilt. Old Bessie. Never needs fixin', never runs out of fuel. Been in the family since Planet Cowtown was founded. Strong truck. Haul you a herd of cows if you want to. What? Asked Shadow Lucas. With a fresh cigarette, Farmer Hoyt locked gaze with Shadow Lucas again, saying directly, Herd of cows? Flippantly, Shadow Lucas replied, Of course I've heard of cows. They still go moo, don't they? Farmer Hoyt put the cigarette between his finger and his thumb and launched it across the yard, sending embers flying. Farmer Hoyt's toothpick moved from the opposite side of his mouth as he said, Mister, you are awful strange. Awful strange, huh? Said Shadow Lucas. Have you been talking with my exes? They all said I was strangely awful. With another new cigarette, Farmer Hoyt stared up at Shadow Lucas, who said, What else you got? Farmer Hoyt began reciting inventory from memory. I got a dog. See, my wife up and died on me, and now I have this German Shepherd that barks as much as she used to talk. I don't know what's worse. Shadow Lucas pretended to take notes. Farmer Hoyt continued. I got some nice carpet in the house, but I wouldn't want to sell you my carpet. You know, I told those pricks from the county office to leave that carpet in that house. That's really good carpet in there. Shadow Lucas continued to pretend to take notes, and Harlan Hoyt lit a fresh cigarette, saying, Then there's the matter of the bathtub. That's a sturdy cast-iron tub, not some flimsy acrylic piece of junk. You know anybody in the market for a good tub? Shadow Lucas stopped and looked up, asking, Well, don't you need it to bathe? Farmer Hoyt exhaled smoke forcefully, responding, Bathe? Hell, that's what I got the outhouse for. Besides, what would I want to do with that tub anyhow? That's where my wife drowned. Shadow Lucas's eyebrows were violently twitching. Harlan Hoyt asked, Are you having some kind of fit, son? Suddenly, a farm animal, a pig, which was actively on fire and loudly squealing repeatedly while running at top speed in between Shadow Lucas and Farmer Hoyt as it tore across the main yard of the farm. I just lost my train of thought, said Shadow Lucas. What was that? Farmer Hoyt looked squarely and unwaveringly at Shadow Lucas, saying, What was what, son? Shadow Lucas swallowed hard, saying, Hey, yeah, was that a flaming pig? Farmer Hoyt lit a new cigarette and exhaled the smoke upwardly directly in Shadow Lucas's face, after which he said, Listen, city slicker, these is thoroughbred swine, so they build up gas. That pig you saw was perfectly fine, just fine. They just get a little excited. Is there anything else about my farm you'd like to tell me how to do better? Shadow Lucas began rapidly waving his open vertical hands back and forth, saying, No, your farmerness, sir. Nope. Farmer Hoyt beckoned him with one finger, and Shadow Lucas knelt down to the farmer's level. Farmer Hoyt took off his half-mesh trucker cap, saying, Look directly at my eyes. What color are they? Brown, said Shadow Lucas. Farmer Hoyt used the bill of the cap as a shade against the sun, saying, About now? Shadow Lucas watched as Farmer Hoyt's irises changed to sky blue. I see everything, except in the dark, said Farmer Hoyt. Clearing his throat and getting back to the black truck, Shadow Lucas asked, What about old Bessie? Old Bessie? Roared Farmer Hoyt, sending ashes and embers flying. What you want with a spent piece of used jet trash milk cow that had done them dried up butters? Son, what do I look like to you, a horseshoe? Shadow Lucas slapped his face with both hands, pulled down on his skin, and said, No, sir, the shiny black truck parked on the lawn. Farmer Hoyt asked, How much you got? The duffel bag was opened, inspected, and the pair shook on it. Inside the Greens Blue duplex in Mississauga, Ontario, everyone was buzzing around excitedly, carrying out Jane's instructions. Jane clapped her hands twice, saying, Denji, pack those duffel bags. Babe, music. Julie, flavored lattes. We can't keep the crew waiting. They don't comprehend tardiness. Denji packed bags, and Lucas put on lively, loud music. Now Julie and Jane were in the kitchen, swinging their hips and making flavored lattes. As Jane was handing Denji his latte, she remembered the small box he had walked in with and located it in the kitchen. It was addressed to Jane and Lucas with their full address. Denji, where did you get this box? Asked Jane. It was just on your front stoop, said Denji. Jane opened the box and froze in place. The others continued with their tasks until Julie noticed her sister not moving. Jane, what is it, hun? Then Julie looked in the box and was also frozen, but managed to shout, Lucas, get in here. The music stopped and Lucas looked inside the box, saying, You have got to be kidding me. Then opened the junk drawer, wildly tearing it apart. Finding what he was looking for, Lucas held the object in the air, saying, This was supposed to have been the last one. Lucas was holding a clear Scruples and Gloom sphere with cereal. Jane reached into the box and removed 2 items, one of which was a clear Scruples and Gloom sphere with cereal. The other was a note, which Jane read aloud. Thought you should have this, from a concerned citizen. Denji noisily sipped his latte, saying, Nice, 2 nuclear warhead triggers. Where are the nuclear warheads? Shadow Lucas clicked the door latch and opened the cab to Old Bessie, the black semi-truck. A veritable circus of odoriferous oddities greeted his nose straight away. With winced eyes and gritted teeth, it took him a moment to acclimate to the malodorous musk before finally climbing into the driver's seat. Now sitting, Shadow Lucas reached into his leather coat and removed a small paper tree on a string that he hung off the sun visor post. Shadow Lucas observed the interior of the truck before proceeding. The truck had a steering wheel, clutch pedal, brake pedal, gas pedal, shifter, and 3 large buttons on the dash labeled Stop, Go, and Fast. There was a plaque under the 3 buttons that read, Cosmic Powered by the Mason. Huh, said Shadow Lucas. I wonder if he is a lodge member. Closing the doors on the 1967 Shelby GT500, Felix, Felicity, Emery, and Emmeline strode across the otherwise empty parking lot, looking like the shoe-in for winners of any Halloween costume contest. A small bell rang on the door of the small local diner as the door opened. Entering and seating themselves at a booth, the four teenagers stopped talking as the waitress arrived. Kikyo, a marsupial woman, greeted Emery and Emmeline, saying, Well, well, if it isn't God's own mercenaries. Who are your friends, girls? Felicity piped up. I'm Felicity, and he's Felix. Do you like our costumes? Our mom and dad are magic. Smiling, Kikyo replied, I bet. What are y'all hungry for? We need a minute, said Emery. The girls taught the Cosmics how to use the menu, and soon everyone's food was served. The girls ate bacon cheeseburgers with fries, and the Cosmics ate corned beef hash, shoestring potatoes, and eggs. Zap, bip, snap. Shadow Lucas appeared in the middle of the diner, stole one fry from each girl's plate. Zap, bip, snap, as he disappeared again. Everyone laughed. He is so weird, said Emery and Emmeline together. Felix looked across the table, slyly asking, So, did you want to know what we were really after? Emery and Emmeline's eyes grew wide with anticipation. Felicity held up her shimmery right arm, flexing her fingers, and smiled. Zap, bip, snap. Shadow Lucas was chewing fries. He consulted his Mars mouse watch. Just enough time, he said. Taking out a pen, he wrote a note that said, Thought you should have this, from a concerned citizen, and tucked it into a small box next to a Scruples and Gloom sphere. Now, said Shadow Lucas, to go backwards so the mail is on time. Zap, bip, snap. As Denji, Julie, Lucas, and Jane opened the side entrance to the Fluff and Fold self-service in Toronto, Ontario, a voice met them from the pitch-black interior. Your punctuality has been recorded. Thank you. Just then, Inferno's head illuminated all four cosmic androids and the four friends and most of the Fluff and Fold. Taking initiative, Jane spoke. Everyone, this maneuver is absolutely critical and also highly technical and extremely dangerous. Lignius, you have Denji. Inferno, cover Lucas. Echo, please take Julie. Bijou, with me. Everyone show me your keys. Denji, Julie, Lucas, and Jane all raised their left arms to display a locker key tethered to each wrist. Jane said, Time check. Watches were synchronized as Jane said, Finally, if your life is threatened, do not engage. Your android was instructed to throw you back into the washing machine. Also, said Jane, we need every last piece of gear that we are going after, so, no pressure. 4 watches beeped. Lignius opened the out-of-service washing machine. Denji, wearing his wetsuit, climbed into the drum. Lignius activated the washer and exited the laundromat, taking flight. Everyone was silent, and then the watches again beeped. Echo opened the washer, and Julie, in a wetsuit, entered. After the door closed, Echo also flew away. Silence, and then there was the beep. Jane grabbed Lucas's face and kissed him, then let go, and both smiled at each other. Inferno sent Lucas into the machine, and then flew away. Silence, and then the beep. Bijou opened the washer, Jane climbed in, and after closing the door and pressing start, Bijou flew away. As everyone knows, diligence is the mother of good luck. So, Udadachi, Begaluk, Buona Fortuna. As Shadow Lucas had just started the engine of Old Bessie, there was a pounding on the door of the cab. Rolling the window down and leaning out, the only thing he could see was the top of Farmer Hoyt's half-mast trucker cap, so he opened the door. City Slicker! Hollered Harlan Hoyt over the rattle of the diesel engine. This here truck ain't no wooden train. Watch out for that last button. This rig is faster than a knife fight in a phone booth, and it'll run you all around Hell's Half Acre if you let it. Shadow Lucas thanked Farmer Hoyt and started to drive, making the large semi-truck lumber out of the yard on Planet Cowtown. Using 2 fingers on his left hand, Shadow Lucas sounded the deafening air horn. Harlan Hoyt lit a cigarette, saying, "That boy got no sense. If brains were leather, that boy couldn't have enough to saddle a June bug." Inside the Fluff and Fold self-service in Milan, Italy, Lignius opened the machine door and Denji popped out and walked directly over to the lockers. Retrieving the foundry's waterproof black duffel bag, he heaved it in the machine and jumped in after it. Lignius pressed the start button and flew away. Inside the Fluff and Fold self-service in Cape Town, South Africa, Echo opened the out-of-service machine for Julie. Stepping out onto the floor and over to the lockers, Julie already heard shouting and gunfire. "Oh, I wish they would try something," she said out loud as she slung the black duffel bag around on her shoulder. Bang! As the door was kicked open, Julie's wish was granted. Armed men rushed into the laundromat, shouting in Afrikaans, "Vrouw, gimme du tas!" Echo grabbed Julie by her ribcage and pitched her into the machine, closed the door, hit the button, and flew away. The confused men with guns looked at Julie through the glass door. From inside the washer, Julie was giving the bandits the middle finger as she shouted back at them in Afrikaans, "Gaan te helto!" Then the machine energized and Julie was whooshed away. Inside the Fluff and Fold self-service in Prague, Czechia, Lucas recovered his duffel bag without incident, and then he looked out the window. Lucas was mesmerized by the old world architecture, building after building, each unique and marvelous. Nothing at all like Roswell, New Mexico, or Mississauga, Ontario. "Go, or I throw you," said Inferno, who was burning a specific color every time he was irritated. Silently, Lucas got into the washer, held his nose, and then whoosh. Inside the Fluff and Fold self-service in Kyoto, Japan, Bijou saw a mother and her young daughter using the other machines. Knowing she needed to stay on task, Bijou opened the out-of-service washer, and Jane rolled out and landed on her feet, with water droplets flying from her long raven hair. Jane immediately saw the bystanders, and bowing deeply to the mother, Jane said, "Konnichiwa, Yonko-san," and the mother bowed and smiled warmly, while the young girl stared in awe. Bijou handed the small girl, Pocky. Now, with bag, Jane knelt all the way down to the floor and bowed to the girl. Jane stood up and climbed to the washer, and Bijou closed the door and pressed start before flying away. The young girl looked at her Pocky, then the machine, then her mother. Today, for this mother and daughter, it was laundry day and also English practice day, and so the mother began. "What good fortune that you meet 2 superheroes today. When I was your age, your grandmother and I saw a superhero here. I wonder." Inside the Fluff and Fold self-service in Toronto, Ontario, Lignius landed and opened the washer for Denji. Echo landed and opened the washer for Julie. Inferno landed and opened the washer for Lucas. Bijou landed and opened the washer for Jane. Wringing out her hair, Jane looked around and said, "Awesome, everyone made it." Goodbyes were said, and the cosmic android set off for somewhere light years from anywhere, and everyone else plus 4 Foundry issue very heavy black duffel bags were all loaded into the violet minivan and taken back to Mississauga. Once at the Greens duplex, everyone was changed into dry clothes, and the duffel bags were carried across the house to Julie's living room. Jane suggested, "Babe, why don't you and Denji make breakfast? That will give Julie and I a chance to set this stuff up, and we aren't sure you're going to believe it how we came across all this gear."